We're on the air. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cafe of Dreams. Your host, Lynn Kitchen, presents the Master Mentor Series. We are so delighted that you are here with us today, because today we are going to be interviewing a very, very special gentleman inside the Master Mentor Series that I know that you're going to enjoy. Let me tell you just a little bit about the Master Mentor Series. I believe that the mentorship is the power in which we all grow. So the power of mentorship is what I love the most. It is, for me, a way of life. So I always love to encourage others to think of consciously always having a mentor and always being a mentor at any one time. Because for me, mentorship is the ground wire to greatness. And what I mean by that is that anyone at any time, no matter what rung of the ladder you find yourself on, you can always reach up to someone who's already been in your shoes right where you are now and find a person that can help you up and stretch you and help you to the next rung or wherever it is that you're heading. And at the same time, you can reach and help another person up to where you are now. And if we all reach out for a mentor and then reach out to be a mentor, we all grow together. And so my philosophy is that's how all boats rise. So today I'm interviewing a very, very wonderful friend of mine. And this all started with several years ago, interviewing my own mentors. And you can see here, Mary Morrissey, Les Brown, Dr. Wayne Dyer, as I interviewed them in a tribute to their mentor. I'm letting you know now that I'm starting a new YouTube channel, and you can view all of the videos that are being posted in the Master Mentor Series, including the one that we will be having today. So you can go to the YouTube Master Mentor Series, Mentors and Motivators by Lynn Kitchen, and you can subscribe there, and you will be my guest. Tonight, it is my pleasure to interview a very, very precious gentleman by the name of Ben Gay III. It's an exclusive interview just to those of you who have registered here today, and we are going to be introducing all kinds of stories that Ben Gay has to share with us. And so without any further ado, let me introduce to you my friend Ben Gay. Welcome to the Cafe of Dreams, Ben.
Thank you, Lynn. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be here with you. And because you're so organized, I've been looking forward to it for weeks, if not a couple of months.
Me too.
A lot of the calls I get are for, can you do a show tomorrow? So it's been a relaxing pleasure to know what was coming and how I could help you and you, me, and so on. So I'm ready to go.
All right. Well, we are ready to go because I just want to honor all of the patrons of the Cafe of Dreams. We had over 400 people sign up and register today, and not all of them could make it, but they signed up so that they could get the replay. And I know that there's a reason why, and that is because they're very, very excited to hear your stories today, Ben. So I want to just shout out to all of my friends and the patrons that are attending here today. And I have one special person that I'd like to shout out to, and her name is Denise Griffiths. Yes. Denise is the wonderful friend that we have in common, Ben, and she introduced me to you. And so I just want to shout out to Denise. I know that she's here today, and Denise is the show host. She has her own radio show called Your Partner in Success Radio. So if you have a chance, check out that is the blog radio, Your Partner in Success Radio. Thank you so much, Denise. So without further ado, I want to just say that Ben is here with so many stories, And if you have questions for him, I invite you to use the Q&A, which is on your screen. And of course, we have the chat as well, but I would particularly request that you use the Q&A for your questions. That way, at the end of this, I have so many questions of my own, so I'm going to be asking Ben the questions, and then we'll have some time at the end just for your questions. We want to make sure that we get to them. So please feel free to use the Q&A. And if you have any questions about that, chat me those questions right here. So let me just now give you a little background of our friend, Ben Gay. You know, Ben has had a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to be mentored by some of the greatest. And so I always like to ask the question, and I'd like you to ask yourself the question, who mentored you? So that's my primary question I'll be asking Ben as we begin. Who mentored you, Ben? And of course, this is part of my Thank Your Mentor series, because as we acknowledge those people who mentor us, we not only grow in appreciation, but we grow in knowing that it's just the beginning, that there's more and more and more. So I'd like to let you know that most people don't know that one of the primary mentors in Ben Gay's life, in his early life, was none other than Napoleon Hill, the author of Think and Grow Rich. And I did not know this about Ben, but he began his career as an entrepreneur at the age of 14. And by the age of 20, he already had a very, very successful business. His business was selling. He was the top salesman in every endeavor that he ever put his effort to, and I'll tell you more about that later. But one of the early mentors that he met as a result of probably, you know, when we'll ask him, how did you meet Napoleon Hill? But he did mentor with Napoleon Hill for the last 3 years of Napoleon Hill's life. So that would have been right around, I figured out, between 1967 and 1970, which was the last year that Napoleon Hill passed away. Well, I think that's extraordinary. And Ben will tell us a little bit about a program that he's putting together called The Last Protege of Napoleon Hill, because he is the last living protege. And so I'm so excited. But not only Napoleon Hill, but Ben also had an extraordinary mentor in Earl Nightingale. And this to me is, you know, is a double win. The strangest secret in the was a record that Earl Nightingale produced, which was the first record-breaking talking motivational record in the history of, I guess, our personal development industry. And it sold over 1 million copies back then, which was, it broke every record, and Earl became a mentor to so many. And we'll hear the stories how Ben was able to get some mentoring with Earl. But not only that, which was a double hit, but also other people also mentored Ben. He was mentored by Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. Everybody knows the power of positive thinking. Zig Ziglar, one of my favorites, he wrote the book, See You at the Top. Og Mandino, another one of my favorites, who wrote The Greatest Salesman in the World. And Dr. Maxwell Maltz, who of course wrote Psycho-Cybernetics. But that's not all. Ben was also mentored by many, many more. J. Douglas Edwards, W. Clement Stone, William Penn Patrick, Jim Newman, Merrill Fraser, James H. Rucker, Fred Herman, Bill Dempsey, Ray Considine, go on and on and on. But I am just so delighted to have someone of your caliber who must have been a very, very curious person and also a sponge. Would you say that about yourself, that you were a sponge, that you were curious, and that must have been a reason that you collected the greats? I mean, not very few among us can really say that we have been mentored by the greats. And you have been. So if it's all right with you, I'd like to ask you the first question, and starting with Napoleon Hill. How did you get the chance to be mentored by Napoleon Hill, and what was he like?
A wonderful gentleman. And the way it happened was he was in our office in San Rafael, California. I was president of Holiday Magic Cosmetics and its related companies, several companies in many different countries. And I had risen up through the ranks and had become president officially because of a sales contest I won. And so one day, I didn't know Dr. Hill was even in the building. He was there presenting William Penpatrick with a book in which he had mentioned Bill Patrick very favorably as one of the top people currently in the United States or whatever. It was very laudatory. And on the way out of the building, they came by my office and the door opened. Bill could open my door without Marty Conley, my executive assistant, approving it, and he didn't have to knock. And there he stood with an older gentleman who I didn't recognize. The pictures I had seen of Dr. Hill were much back with the high collar, which he hated that picture, by the way, back with the high collar and so on. So I truly didn't recognize him. I just thought it was a friend of Bill's, and I was probably going to be asked to build a company around him or something. And as I started around the desk, I said, "Hi, I'm Ben Gay," and stuck out my hand. And William Penpatrick, Bill Patrick, said, "Ben, this is Dr. Napoleon Hill." I said, "Oh my goodness, Dr. Hill, pleasure to meet you." He said, "Call me Nappy." Well, that started an argument that went on till the day he died. I refused to call him Nappy. I'm from the South. If you're significantly older than I am, you're Mr., Ms., Mrs., or Doctor, or whatever. In high school, I'd known my teachers had first names. I just assumed it was Mr. or Mrs. And so there stood Dr. Hill, and Bill said, for everyone in the reception area to hear, or the area where my assistant and her people sat, he said, "Ben, I know that there must be times when you're a little concerned or afraid and so on, and you don't want to come down the hall." We were at opposite ends of a long building. "Come down the hall to me and share your fears, for fear you'll get fired. So I've retained Dr. Hill to be your confidant." I don't think he used the word mentor then. We didn't hear that word much, or coach, but to be your confidant and your friend. I tell people it was like Rodney Dangerfield, the comedian, used to say that his family had to tie a pork chop around his neck so the dog would play with him. Well, William Penpatrick tied a $50,000 check around my neck so Dr. Hill would associate with me, and our relationship began. And $50,000, by the way, in 1967 was a lot of money. It's like $500,000 today. And on that basis, we began over the phone whenever we brought him out to California, whenever he happened to be in California anyway, whenever I was back in South Carolina. And he had a place at the end of my desk. My desk was a big conference table, and to my left on the end was a chair no one else, probably somebody did it sometime, but I don't remember anybody else sitting in it, because that was known as Dr. Hill's chair. And when he was in town, that's where he sat, and there was no meeting he couldn't be in. If he left the room in a meeting, it's because he wanted to. He could hear anything I heard, any phone calls, anything, all decisions. And he never once corrected me or offered me even constructive criticism in front of other people. But when the meeting was over and the room cleared, I'd wait for the door to shut. And when the door shut, I'd turn to Dr. Hill, who invariably would have something to say, but not of the length and breadth of his writings in The Laws of Success and various, but Think and Grow Rich, of course. You know, he goes into some great detail. To me, it was things like, do it if there was a decision in the air after the meeting, or don't do it, or ignore them, or whatever. And then he would, unless I had questions, he'd go back to writing, I guess, his next book. He was always writing something. And so that's how our relationship began. And I won't tell you the long story, it'd take up too much time here, but I tested the theory. I really didn't believe one person could pay somebody $50,000 for a year and that person wouldn't be loyal to the person who gave the check to him. So I set up a couple of situations wherein if he was going to rat me out, these are the subjects on which he would rat me out. And I covered myself with a letter to Bill. So when the explosion came, I could say, look in here, read this letter. It was a setup, but it never happened. And I told Dr. Hill, as the relationship wore on, I told him some things that maybe he should have run and told Bill about. This kid isn't qualified. I was running a company that pretty quickly we were taking in $1 million a day, 7 days a week in 1967, $68. And when I left, we had reached the point where in today's money, it'd be about $3.5 billion. We were bigger than Amway and Shackley combined at the time. Now, I said all that to say this. I had a high school education. I was 25 years old.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
So,
by no normal measurement should I have been president, but I actually did a pretty good job, in large part thanks to Dr. Hill and Earl Nightingale and lots of other people who helped.
So you can say that there was an interest in his helping you to get to be the best salesman that you could be at the time.
Best person
That you could be at the time. What was your impression of Dr. Hill, and did he really understand the impact that he had on the author of Think and Grow Rich? Of course, today that's like the Bible of motivation, and every person who is in the sales or in the law of attraction. But I'm wondering if you knew whether or not he had a sense of his own importance or the importance of his book at that time.
I think he did, of the potential of it, but he expressed to me several times his concern that he and his work would soon be forgotten. So I've devoted part of my life, and I'm about to devote the rest of it to making sure that doesn't happen. But he was walking through my house one day, and there was a copy of Think and Grow Rich laying on the coffee table. Probably a setup by my wife. I even looked down and thought, well, that's a little cheesy. He's visiting for the weekend, and there's the book. But I said, Dr. Hill, here's Think and Grow Rich. How does it feel to be one of the best-selling authors of all time? Back then, I don't know if it's still true. I don't know if it was ever true, but they used to say that Think and Grow Rich was second only to the Bible in sales. And he said, best-selling, least read. He was acutely aware that everybody was buying a copy, but he was also aware they weren't opening it. I have proof right here. This is a copy of Think and Grow Rich. It's 73 years old. It was this particular one was printed in 1945. It was given to me about a year ago by a friend, Sandra Nomer, and it tells the whole story. A lady named Grace Dixon must have gone to a book signing, stood in line, bought the book, etc., and he signed it to Grace Dixon with best wishes, Napoleon Hill. When I opened the book, when it was given to me about a year ago, I went to open it, and I won't do it now, but it was quickly evident it had never been opened before. The only time this book was ever opened was when Dr. Hill flipped back the cover and put his signature and a little saying on there. Now look at the book. Bright red on the front, bright red on the back, faded on the spine. That means Grace Dixon stood in line, paid for the book, got it signed, took it home, stuck it in her bookcase where the spine was exposed to the sun and so on. And there it sat for 4 years, proving Dr. Hill's concern. Best-selling, least read. So one of the things we're doing with the last protege and in all my seminars is getting people to understand this is gold. It's real good stuff. Like Earl's The Stranger's Secret. Yeah, let me jump ahead a little bit for just a second. One day, one weekend, Dr. Hill and Earl Nightingale and 2 or 3 other people were staying at the house in Marin County. And they knew the story of the day I joined. I was presented with a copy, an old beat up copy of Think and Grow Rich, an old scratched up record of The Stranger's Secret, which I have about 10 feet from where I'm sitting. And by my sponsor into the business, he said, you're young, you're going to need these. So I went home and started reading the book, and I listened to the record was almost worn out when I got it. It's horrible now, but you can still hear it. And so one day sitting in the house, having heard that story, Earl and or Dr. Hill in unison said, well, did the information help you? And I said, well, look around. They were sitting in one of the biggest homes in Marin County. And when I was living in a $75 apartment, when I was handed the books and the record, and they both worked for me by that time. So I said to them, I shouldn't have, I was young and full of myself, but I said, well, you both work for me. What do you think? And they cracked up laughing. Obviously, it did me some good.
By then, you had the accoutrements of a new conditioned lifestyle that was showing the results.
Yeah, I had the trappings. I didn't have the wisdom yet. That took a few more years.
Well, so be it. But let me ask you a question. You mentioned to me that Dr. Hill confided in you a deep held fear that he had, which is kind of interesting when you juxtapose that to Think and Grow Rich and the whole chapter on making friends with your fears. Could you comment on what he shared with you?
Well, if you're talking about being forgotten,
was that his greatest fear?
Yeah, that he and his work would be forgotten, because he knew he had done good stuff. And, you know, when you sort of leave it all on the court and people aren't absorbing it like they should be, that concerned him. And I stood in front of a group a year or so ago, and I said, how many of you are familiar with Dr. Hill? Less than 10% of the hands in the room went up. The rest, I acted like they'd never heard of him. I thought, that's frightening. You know, that'd be like standing up in front of a Christian organization saying, have you heard of the Bible? And, you know, we got a Bible. You know, it's all been written down. That's the frustrating part about it. If you did nothing but listen to The Strangest Secret about once a week and read Think and Grow Rich at least every year, you got everything, and the Bible. I won't get off into philosophy and religion and so on, but, you know, a few of the good classics, it's all said. It's right there. It's available to anyone. But Earl said, right, if you want to keep a secret, put it in a book and put a copy in every library in the world. Your secret will remain a secret, because people don't go in libraries and check out books, and actually a very small percentage do that, and then actually go home and read them. It's infinitesimal. So they both had a real understanding of their temporariness. That's not a word, but I think you know what I mean.
Well, I do know what you mean. Yeah. And maybe it's true that dying with your dreams left in you could be, right, a common fear that we all have. And that's why it's so important for us to have mentors, so that the best that's within us can continue to be. And so I do understand, because Dr. Hill had such an impact on, and he himself had, you know, interviewed all of the greats and had been mentored by the greats of the early century, and then was passing a lot of this information on. And of course, you, Ben, are one of the being the last protege, living protege, yep, anyway, of Dr. Hill. I want to tell everyone, and we'll tell you more at the end of the program here, that I know that you have a program called The Protege, the last protege, mm-hmm, of Dr. Hill's. And so that's a program that anyone can sign up with you and actually learn a lot more of the training of that was involved in Think and Grow Rich. But I have a question. When you mentioned the word secret, and Earl Nightingale had produced The Greatest Secret.
Rangers.
Tell us a little bit about Earl now as your mentor. You mentioned to me just now that you actually had hired both gentlemen for your company, and you were a young whippersnapper at the time, probably not more than 25 years old.
Right.
I can just imagine that you were hiring some of these greats. Now, could you tell the patrons here, how did that happen? Or did you were they spokesmen for your company? What was the setup or the condition?
Well, Earl was the voice of Holiday Magic and all of our related companies. He was the voice of Stay Power Motor Oil Additives and Bob Cummings Vitamins and so on. They all
So
had
he did a
exactly
lot
the
of
same.
commercials, like you
Yeah,
mean
well,
voice
commercials,
or
and we bought his stuff, The Strangest Secret, and his big album in those days called Lead the Field. And
lead the field?
yeah,
Yes.
if you joined Holiday Magic, you were quickly sold or given, or it came in your package, Lead the Field with Holiday Magic. And there Earl did a little lead in about our company, and then the rest of it was the standard Lead the Field, and then he did a lead out on the last side of the last record. If you joined Stay Power Motor Oil Additives, Lead the Field with Stay Power, and so on. So we used him in that way, because when I took over the company and began adding the other companies with the help of William Penpatrick, of course, the owner, um, we didn't have a training program. And I came from Macy's and things like that. And I said, where's the training program? Well, we didn't have one. So going home from work one day, I listened to the radio and I heard Our Changing World, a radio program, a little 5-minute program Earl used to offer to radio stations and then sell the commercials on the recording. And I thought, oh, he's good. And so a phone call or two later to Merle Frazier, another one of my mentors, suddenly I was talking to Earl Nightingale. And
Wow, that must have been such a treat for you.
well, it was, and that wonderful voice of his, I thought it was like I'd phoned heaven and gotten God on the phone, when he began talking. So I asked him to do some stuff for us, and the first thing we did was imprint our name on his established materials, which made us look bigger and smarter than we were. And then he started recording. You remember little flexi records? They used to come in magazines. You could tear them out and put them on. They were square, but they were small enough where they didn't interfere with a turntable. So you could tear a record out of a magazine and play it. Well, he did flexi records for all of our companies. One was Invitation to Success. If you weren't bright enough to learn the script and invite somebody the opportunity, you handed them Earl's record and he invited them for you. At the end of the meeting, we gave you another one, Passport to Success by Earl Nightingale. You've seen the meeting, now here's what you do. And then moving up in the organization, in every organization, the top position was General Distributor. And he recorded one called The General Idea. And for those who couldn't or wouldn't learn the scripts, I provided them to them in Earl's voice. So and then he appeared at seminars for us and so on. He still did all his stuff, but he worked with us and for us.
And what was the impact that you remember the most? How did he make you feel, or what personally, what impact did he have on you as a mentor, would you say?
Well, what he did for me, I had, my mother and father were wonderful people and both were mentors, but my idol was my father. And I haven't learned anything over the past 50 some odd years that he didn't teach me or offer to teach me first. What Earl did for me was he said to me all of the wise things my father and all of his friends, Dad had done well, so we belonged to East Lake Country Club in Atlanta, which meant I could go over and sit in the men's grill with him as long as I promised to be quiet and listen to the chairman of the board of Coca-Cola and Bobby Jones, the great golfer. That was his home club, and listen to all of them talk. So I developed a real appetite for learning from people. And that's the reason I started seeking out people. It's not by accident that all those people you listed were friends and mentors of mine. I made it happen because I saw the advantage of it. But what Earl did was he put into his voice a different voice, which a young man sometimes need. Yeah, I hear you, Dad. I heard all that stuff. Thank you. But coming from Earl, it made more sense. Not that it was any better said, might have been, but it was from somebody else. And I've used that with our 4 boys when I've sent them off to seminar. When I wanted them to learn public speaking, for instance, and one of ours does a lot of it in his company, I sent them to Dale Carnegie. When I wanted to learn philosophy, I sent them to Pace Seminar, Jim Newman's company. And they would call back and say, Dad, you won't believe it. You can set goals and so on. And I'm looking at the phone like, yeah. But
Have I taught you nothing?
Yeah. But it came from somebody else. And Earl was well-read and a great thinker and a serious guy. It was a lot of fun behind the scenes, but a serious thinker. When he talked to you, you thought, oh, there's something behind this. This isn't just chatter. And so I zeroed in on those things that he brought up that I should have learned from my father and or from the Bible, Proverbs in particular, and the other stuff I'd been exposed to. So he just brought it to life for me and put a face on it.
That's so wonderful. And so Earl Nightingale, Dr. Hill, tell us now a little bit about some of the other greats. I particularly would love to hear about Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, Zig Ziglar, Og Mandino. To me, those people were at the beginning of my sales career when I was in college, and I was like a groupie going to insurance conferences, trying to get in on the, when they had the speech conferences where they brought in all of the great motivational speakers at the time in the 1970s. And I would stand in line trying to get a ticket to listen to Dr. Norman Vincent Peale speak, and I did have a chance to, and also Zig Ziglar and Og Mandino, Maxwell Maltz. And I would go back to the office. I was a young stockbroker at the time in the early mid 70s, and working 14 hours a day, and really needed that motivation.
Sure.
Was that the same for you too? How did they represent themselves in your life as mentors?
Well, the way I started meeting that crowd was, besides Holiday Magic and its affiliated companies were what was going on in that era. And so if you want to make money and move up and so on, or build your speaking career, it would be a real good idea to come see us, to get in contact with us. So a lot of them just came to me, not because I deserved it, but because I was in the situation and I was president. So if you wanted to get close to us, you had to first go through Marty Connolly, my executive assistant. She was a killer. And then me. That was the gateway to the money. So I was very lucky to be sitting in that situation. You reminded me when you're talking about going to the meetings, in my era, which is ahead of yours, American Sales Masters was where you met all those people, where you saw one after another on stage. And that's where I won a little contest in Atlanta for something, and the prize was I got to go to Miami, Florida, to American Sales Masters Convention, sit on the front row, and have a private dinner with J. Douglas Edwards, at the time considered probably one of the great sales trainers of all time. And I did, and I listened, and I took notes, and then he took me to dinner, and I took more notes because we didn't eat. He paid the waiter $100 and said all we needed was water, that I wanted to learn how to be a salesman. And I was at that age where I wanted to learn how to be a salesman, but I wouldn't have minded having a meal also, but that was skipped over. But did that take hold? Here's a book, Sales Closing Power by J. Douglas Edwards. I wrote this for Doug's family after he died. He never wrote a book, and that's available in the Closer series. So I didn't say it to Doug, but it was sort of like the conversation with Dr. Hill and Earl Nightingale. Did it work? Yeah. It worked so well.
Yeah.
I wrote a book based on your teachings, Doug. So Zig Ziglar and I joined the same company on the same day. Zig was, I think, 18 years older than I was. But we joined Holiday Magic on Wednesday, September 15th, 1965, and he'd answered the same one ad I did. He was older and more experienced in the church and all. He'd done a lot of speaking, but he wasn't known by anybody. He was still selling cookware. So we joined Holiday Magic, and that was the launching pad for both of us. That's where we started making some serious money. Him faster than me because he had a little running start, and I was butt-headed. I didn't think I had to learn the scripts or anything. I just thought smiling and being Ben Gay would be enough. Well, it wasn't. So first 6 months, he got off to a little quicker start, but I caught him and became president of the company because I won the ultimate sales contest. The first prize in that contest, by the way, was a mystery prize. Second was a Rolls Royce. Third was a Lincoln. Fourth was a Thunderbird. And then it went downhill from there. And
Wow, what did you get?
I won the mystery prize.
Oh, the mystery
Yeah.
prize.
And then when flown to California to discover what the mystery prize was,
Oh,
I discovered it was presidency of the company. And so I said to Bill Patrick, why was it a mystery prize? He said, in case somebody won it who I didn't like. So he would have changed it, I guess, added another Rolls Royce or something. So I got the mystery prize. And Zig and
and
I used to
became
laugh.
president.
Yeah, Zig would call and say, how's it going today or something? And I'd say, Zig, I tell you what, I wish you had won this contest. Here's the deal. Bring the rolls out. Give me the keys. I'll give you the keys to the front door of this rodeo I've gotten into. And he said, oh, no, you won fair and square.
Oh, you
So,
won president fair and square. That's extraordinary.
yeah.
That's extraordinary. Well,
So
Ziggy,
they all came along in that group. I mean, they were speaking in our seminar. People say, how did you meet so many wonderful people? And I say this facetiously, what I had to do to meet or see again some of the people who went on to become legends was get up from my office desk, walk out the front door, walk down the hallway to the men's room, and on the way I'd meet 4 or 5. If I went all the way to the back of the building to William Penn Patrick's, I'd probably meet 10 on the way.
that must have
That's
been an
where they were.
extraordinary
Well, it was
group.
extraordinary, but at that time, I was talking to somebody one day about Napoleon Hill and Earl and Doug Edwards and a bunch of people all being at the house. When they were in town, we had a big house, lots of bedrooms. It was easier for me to have them stay there than go to a hotel and pick them up and do all that stuff. So they said, what was it like? What do you remember most? And I said, well, because see, they pictured us all in white robes sitting around in a circle on the floor saying profound things to each other. I said, well, what I remember most is none of them could shoot pool. I had a big game room with a professional table in it and so on. And I played customer pool. I know how to lose a game to, customer golf at Skull.
Oh,
I know how to lose a game to make your guests feel more comfortable. I couldn't lose to Earl and Dr. Hill wasn't fair. He was an older man by then, but Earl should have been able to shoot pool. He couldn't. And Doug Edwards was even worse. So that's what my point being, they and we weren't legends yet. And in my case, probably never will be, but weren't legends yet. We were just people trying to build a business. Earl had some serious business problems. He told me that I don't know if it was personal or corporate or whatever, but he'd been bankrupt 3 times before I met him. But he kept getting back up and rebuilding and going forward and so on. He was just a marvelous guy. Absolutely marvelous. Dr. Hill had problems, family problems, and so on. It reminded me, I think it was Getty said he'd give up everything. J. Paul Getty would give up everything he had to have a happy family, and which he never got. So he never gave up the money either. Dr. Hill was sort of that way, famous to a degree, best-selling book, but he had lots of family problems and issues. So they taught me that. Dr. Quick, sort of off the subject. Well, it's not off the subject, but you didn't ask me. One day I was talking to Dr. Hill, and he was aware I was doing 300 seminars a year. Thank God for the Learjet, and did a 33 in 33 different cities in 11 days once.
wow.
So
That must be your record.
it was close. It was for me.
Yes, of course.
One in the morning, one at lunch, and one at dinner, and all 3 opportunity meetings type thing. But Dr. Hill said, "How are you handling the family?" And he'd been to the house. He knew my wife at the time. She's since passed away, Marcia. He'd been to the house, and he knew her, and we appeared to be happy-dappy and so on, and we were. But when you're gone 300 days out of 365 and she's not with you on most of them, that leads to some problems. And I said, Dr. Hill, I'm doing pretty good. I'm busy, but I take my family and I tuck it into the nooks and crannies. And Dr. Hill said, we found the problem. I said, what? And he said, what I want you to do is plan your family business first and stick business into the nooks and crannies. And if you do and you're organized, you'll have plenty of time for both. That was a life-changing, light bulb on moment for me.
It's a beautiful story. Wow.
Want to go to Og?
Yes, let's go to Og Mandino, one
I
of my
know.
favorites.
Yeah, one of mine
The
too.
Greatest
And
Salesman of the World. That's the name of his book.
yep, and a great book. So it's simple and clean and pure and easy to learn from. If your viewers have not yet gotten it, get it. Uh, anyway, Og did the Og things that he did and stood in the front of the room with that great accent and was very profound, and I learned all that stuff. He saved my life in a private moment. In one of his books, he talks about at least one time, if not two, where he tried or contemplated suicide. One, he was drunk in a park on a park bench and decided to go over to the pawn shop and buy a gun and kill himself. And the plot fell apart because he didn't have the, I forget what it was, $29, $39, whatever it was. He didn't have the money to buy the gun to kill himself.
Wow.
So I guess there are some advantages to poverty. And then on another occasion, he said, Ben, I put the gun in my mouth. And the reason I'm here talking to you today is I tasted defeat. He meant psychologically he tasted defeat, but also the gun with the gun oil on it and the residue from having been fired and so on has a unique taste. He said, I tasted defeat. I put the gun down and got back to my life, and everything good that happened in his life happened from that day on. So Bill Patrick and I have a dispute. I leave the company. First, I'm exiled to Canada to run that operation. He thought that would kill me, but I made it a success. And then we decided to part ways. So I'm 30 years old, a little over 30. I'm unemployed. Still had a good deal of money, but I'm unemployed. Freud said three worst things that can happen to a man are you turn 30, you're fired, and your father dies. Probably if he said it today, he would be turning 50 or something. I don't know. But anyway, that's what it was at the time. Well, I turned 30, got fired. My father died all in about 6 months. And it had a profound effect on me. So one day I'm sitting in that big, beautiful house up in my office overlooking San Francisco Bay with a 357 cocked, ready to put in a 357 Magnum pistol, ready to put in my mouth. And I put it in my mouth right there. And I tasted defeat. I tasted exactly what Og Mandino was talking about, the combination of gun oil, residue from being fired, etc. I tasted defeat. And I thought, if I got through this, I can get through this. I put it down. Long story short, we lost the house. The cars were towed away a few years later. And I started over. I started the 800 call center industry, built the biggest one in the world in history with no money. I drove into this town in 1976 with a nickel in my pocket in a borrowed Mercury Bobcat.
And that was after all the success earlier in your life. And I just want to pause a moment, if you don't mind. And thank you for telling that story. You never know what stories can help others.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy that Og Mandino told you that story, because in that moment, it helped you. And we just don't know. So anybody that might be listening to this broadcast, even years from now or decades from now, might be helped. And so I just wanted to pause and thank you, Ben, for, I mean, that's a very precious and tender story. And so thank you so much.
I appreciate it. I hope it did help somebody now, later, whatever. You never know. I had a guy call on me one time, or asked to come see me, and he was in San Francisco. I was in Marin County, so he drove over the Golden Gate Bridge. He met with me. I thought we had a normal, positive, upbeat conversation. Years go by. He's meeting with a guy. He didn't know the guy knew me, with one of my business partners. And Sam was his name. Sam mentioned my name in passing. And he said, Ben Gay, something. And this gentleman bowed his head and started crying. And Sam said, I thought to myself, my God, what did Ben do to him? Well, it turned out he had decided to commit suicide. He'd written the suicide note. He drove over the Golden Gate Bridge to meet me, assuming that wouldn't work out. On the way back, he was going to jump. All his belongings were that he cared about his family getting were neatly stacked in the back seat. And he said, I don't think Ben Gay knew it, but he saved my life that day. You just never know what somebody else is going through. Nobody knew I was at that point. I was happy dappy. Hi, I'm Ben Gay. Good to see you. Driving around in my Corvette, everything was good. And I had,
as a matter of fact, you told me that now in your speaking, and of course, Ben speaks all over the country, all over the world. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in just a second. But Ben, you told me that you do something special when people have had that experience. You invite them to shake your hand in a particular way. Could you tell us about that?
It was two things I asked them to do. One, it depends on which one I emphasize, but if I tell the suicide story, it's that. And then I was also what I prefer to be called a guest of the federal government in a gated community in Lompoc, California. Translated, that's Latin for I was in prison for 6 years, 1 month, 1 day, and 2 hours. But who counts when you're having fun? So if I tell either of those stories in front of a group, I say, I hope I get an opportunity to shake all of your hands. If you've been in that situation, when we shake hands, give me a little double squeeze. Nobody else will see it. Well, about 10% or more of every group I speak to, I get the double squeeze. They've been through some traumatic life experience, prison, perhaps for something they didn't do, suicide, deep depression, whatever. And I think if I provide a service there, I can say, look, here I am, doing well, everything's fine, best-selling books, seminars, That's after the gun was in my mouth and after 6 years in federal prison.
Well, first I want to say I'm so happy that you are still here with us, and just to share a little bit about, what you have been doing to give back. Not only have you been mentored by some of the very greatest, but I just want to tell everyone that you have dedicated your life really to being a mentor. And for this, I want to pay tribute to you today inside the Master Mentor series, Ben, because of all of the people that you have helped and written books. Just your books are only the tip of the iceberg, but you have been all over the country speaking. And I understand you are an author of 12 books, and you have co-authored or ghost-written most of the great sales manuals out there. So if anybody has a sales book at all in their library, most likely it was written by you. But you are known, and I don't think it's any stretch of the imagination, but you have affected so many people's lives in the area of sales in particular, that you're known now as one of the living legends as a sales trainer. And so we just want to say thank you for all the work that you have done. I want to let people know where they can learn more about you. The Last Protege of Dr. Napoleon Hill is one of your programs. If anyone is interested in that program, I invite them to go to www.thelastprotege.com, and they can sign up for more information for the programs that you're going to be teaching in the future, which is all about the lessons learned by being mentored by Napoleon Hill. And finally, if any of you would like one or many or all of Ben Gay's books, then he has a special place that you can go to where you can get the best prices plus no cost of shipping. And that would be this website. Go to stores.ebay.com/Ronzoni Books, spelled RONZONE books. That's stores.ebay.com/Ronzoni Books. And you can write down those two places where you can get some more information from Ben. And I'm just so thrilled because, to have someone of your caliber with us today, Ben, is it's rare. that you have not only been mentored by so many, but that you mentor so many. So my second big question to you, and then I'm going to jump over to other people's questions if it's all right.
Okay.
Could you tell us what kind of pleasure it has been in your life, not only to be mentored, but to mentor others as a way of life? What has that brought to you?
Well, it is my life, and it's brought great joy. It's what I do. When I started People Builders at San Quentin State Prison, there I was a consultant, not a guest, but it was near my house. So I started a program called People Builders there. And what I loved about it was, you know, when you work with a group of successful salespeople and you tell them, do this, or whatever, you hope you have some impact, but it's sort of hard to sometimes see the results. Somebody's already making $500,000 a year and they go to 560,000. It's not quite as exciting. At San Quentin, what I loved was that you could see the results. You know, when you're working with somebody who was on death row and now he has a successful job with Levi Strauss and he went through your People Builders program. So the best thing I can tell you there is when I got to San Quentin, the recidivism rate, people got out and came back within 2 years was 67%. The graduates of People Builders, it was less than 5%. And it was only a 12-week course. Some of them went through it more than once, but nevertheless, a 12-week course, and we dropped the recidivism rate with those people from 67% to 5%. So I liken it to my days of lawn mowing. I hated to mow a lawn that didn't really need it because when you got to the end of the line, turned around, you couldn't tell where you'd been. I like to mow a lawn that was about this deep. And when I got the end turned around, I could see what I accomplished. San Quentin did that for me. The same classes I taught at Lompoc, People Builders again, public speaking, sales and marketing, communications, getting people their GED and so on, just had an enormous impact. So that's what I've done my entire adult life. But those two places showed me the greatest impact. It was even more visible. Now, individually, if I could, let me show you, this isn't pushing a book, but make you aware of this gentleman. His name is Lamont Bowen. He's an honorary son of ours, and that we honorarily adopted him and have done some nice things for him. I met him at Lompoc. He was an 18-year-old drug dealer serving a 5-year sentence. He'd never graduated high school. His idea, his goal, I heard from a mutual friend, was to get out of prison, stick somebody up, get $500 and finance his way back into the drug business. That was his plan, which would have meant the rest of his life in prison when he got caught or being shot dead in a drug deal gone bad. That was really what was laying ahead of him. I got him into public speaking, then into sales and marketing, etc. And then Gigi fell in love with him also. So when he got out, got him his GED there. When he got out, helped get him into college. We didn't pay a dime, by the way. I don't want to take any credit for this, but we did co-sign his student loans to get him into college. Then we co-signed his tuition, government loans, to get him into law school. And this is his book, Don't Let Your Past Hold You Back, by Lamont Bowen. And he is now a successful practicing attorney from an 18-year-old drug dealer whose plan was to stick up somebody and get back in the drug business. That's what I live for. I got lots of stories like that, but that
I'll
book,
bet you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That book is sort of indicative of what I really do. I would pay. Here's a secret. Don't tell anybody this. I would pay, if I had to, I would pay to do what I do instead of being paid.
Well, bless your heart, you do it well. Thank you so much. I would love to ask you more because I have so many more questions, but I would like to honor those questions that have been brought in here by some of our patrons here at the Cafe of Dreams. So let me just begin, if it's all right with you, Ben, a couple of questions. This is a question that came up based upon one of the stories that you were talking about. This question is from Deanne. I want to know how Ben fit business around his family. I'd love the details and an example, please.
Dr. Hill taught me family first, business in the nooks and crannies. So I have my it's out of reach right now, but I have my ever-present day planner with me where if that ever goes, I'm going to have to retire. If it is ever lost or still, I'll have to retire. I run my life by what I write in it to do. That's my great success secret. I come in the morning, open up the book, do what it says, because I've planned it out that way. I was taught that system by Dr. Hill. And so Gigi and I plan 4 long weekends. I don't do 2-weekers. I couldn't. I don't think I go nuts by the end of 2 weeks of doing nothing. But we plan 4 4-dayers, long weekends, usually over at the coast in Mendocino, our favorite place in the world. And when I write those in the book at the beginning of every year, those days are sacrosanct. I don't care how much you offer me to come give a seminar or whatever. If it falls on one of those days, I'm not going to do it. Mm-hmm. And we have date night. We eat out a lot, but we have an official date night that is not to be interfered with, and a favorite restaurant and a favorite table in that restaurant. And it's a table for 2 deliberately so that no one else can join us. You know, people come up and go, "Hi, how are you? Mind if we join you?" Actually, I do. There's only 2 here, room for 2, Gigi and me. So that's what I do. You plot it out in advance instead of waiting for a day to open up where you can pay attention to your loved ones.
That's
plot
great.
It out in advance.
All right. I hope that answers, and that there's so many questions here. I want to get to the next. One question is, the feeling of defeat can completely derail a person.
Yeah.
As Ben, yes, as Ben does, as Ben said. Was it sheer grit that brought you back on purpose, Ben?
Grit, pride, ego, whatever. The way I was raised, my family, I didn't come from a family of quitters. When we lost everything in Marin County and I moved up here to start a whole new industry, no one knew what an 800 number was at the time, and or what a call center was, and so on. And I was talking to my mother one day while we were waiting for the phone lines to be installed. We had to redo the whole community to get enough phone lines into an area that didn't have those phone lines before. And my mother said to me one day, "Have you ever considered getting a job?" And I said, "Who do you think you're talking to? The gays don't have jobs. We own companies and run companies and so on." And so that's what I'm going to do, go back to it. So a large part of it was habit. Excuse me. But back to that calendar again, I don't allow depression, and I suffer from depression from time to time for no apparent reason. Nothing has to go wrong. It just comes over me because depression is a chemical imbalance. I also have dry skin and allergies, and I don't think any one of the 3, depression, dry skin, or allergies, are character flaws. So what I do when I'm feeling a little low, for a reason or not, I open up my calendar to that day and I do what it says to do. A co-writer of mine, Steve Williford, I hired him to write a book, my first book, a stab at having a good seller. And he wrote 1 chapter, sent it back, said, "All right, mark this one up and write yours." And I said, "Write mine what? I paid you to write." He said, No, you paid me to write some of it and to teach you how to write." He said, "Ben, you're a better writer than I am." I said, "Yeah, when I'm inspired." He said, we found the problem. Writers write every day, inspired or not. You write, and so on my calendar, one of the things every day is write. And I write at least 1 page of printable copy, ready to go to the printers, either a sales piece for somebody else, a sales script, part of a book, a new book. I'm currently working on 2 ghostwriting projects. So I come in, I don't like to write until I'm really in it. But the first sentence or 2 or page is agony for me. I'd rather have root canal done. I procrastinate, or I would, except on the calendar, I can't take my magic China marker and cross it out as done if I haven't written. So that's how I get through things like that. Discipline of looking at the calendar and doing what it says. If we have time, this time or another time, ask me how Dr. Hill taught me that as far as a whole career.
Okay, well, that would be a great question, and probably a very, very insightful answer. And we are almost at the top of the hour. So I do want to just make sure everyone has this information, and those that have to jump off, we certainly want to thank you for being here. And those who may wish to stay for a few more minutes, I don't know, Ben, are you available to stay for a few more questions today?
Sure.
Okay.
Be happy to.
Great. And then we can always come back for a second. If you would love, we'll come back for part 2 of Ben Gay III.
Love to do that.
Great. So for today, those who are interested in more information as the last protege of Dr. Napoleon Hill, please go to thelastprotege.com. And if you're interested in some of Ben Gay III's great books, because as he has proven, he is one of the greatest sales trainers, and so his books will help you sell if that is part of what you would love. Stores.ebay.com/Ron Zoney books. You'll get the best pricing there, plus no shipping costs. And so I just want to thank you so much, my patrons, all of those of you who've been here for this whole program. Thank you so much. I know that Ben Gay appreciates your time and attention. We certainly would like to have you come back again another time. And for those of you who can stay, I've got just a few more questions. So for now, those of you who do have to leave, again, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
So a few more questions. I had, some of the comments too that are coming in are just are wonderful, Ben, that you might like to hear. And that is, thank you so much for many, many thanks for introducing Ben to us. He's magnificent.
Yes.
And thank you so much. This is wonderful. Here's a very good question, I think. I was blessed as a teenager to have my father share all the sales training programs that he was exposed to as an executive. So I'm a firm believer in Dr. Napoleon Hill and the others that you're speaking about. However, my husband is such a pessimist. I can't get him to realize that the reasons only bad things happen for him is because he actually says stuff like, why is life so hard? Anyway, Ben, do you have any wisdom on how I can inspire him or help him to think positively? Great question.
It sure is. Set the example. Sort of hard to be around somebody who's doing well, acting positive, and so on, and continue to be. In other words, deliberately do it. You train animals with positive reinforcement. Train him by showing him a positive side. And every day, day in and day out, with malice and intent. In other words, I am now showing him how the upside can be. It reminded me when you first read the question, what Jim Rohn said. Somebody came up to him in a seminar somewhere and said, Jim, this happens and that happens and this, all bad. And, why is that? And Jim said, I don't know. I guess things like that always happen to people like you. Which I thought was great. He didn't try and jack him up. He just said, you're a miserable human. And that's what happens to miserable humans. So the trick is to become upbeat and positive and so on. And or tell your husband, at least don't let it show. It depresses other people. I've been defeated several times, but I never told anybody I was defeated until the story was in the past and it was a rear view mirror learning lesson. On my worst day, before I went up to the office with a gun and after I came down having not fired it, I was positive and upbeat and so on. People say, he's just unbelievable. No matter what's going on, he's happy. Well, here's the good news. I'm not just tricking myself. I'm tricking them. If I'm always happy and upbeat and so on, they tend to be, and that flows back on me and I benefit from it. People do good things for people and say, I don't want anything in return. Well, want is an interesting word, but I don't expect anything in return. Well, let me tell you something. I do. The Bible says what you hand out comes back tenfold, yea, 100-fold or 1,000-fold,
not
whatever.
Necessarily from the same person, though, right? But just from the benefit.
For what you put out there.
The beneficiary.
Instead of doing something nice for somebody and then staring at them, waiting for them to pay you back. I just know that if we had dinner out last night, and we made great buddies with a waiter we have known from before, but new to this restaurant, and his shadow, that person who follows you around when you're the server and you're learning, stands behind you and writes things down. First, I thought she was the supervisor from hell. But then I figured out she was shadowing him to find out how to do her job. Well, we made friends with her, buddies. I know her kid's name. Gigi knows her favorite color because Gigi's much nicer than I am. And we left hugging her. She was crying. You come back anytime. Al doesn't have to be here, the guy she was shadowing. Starting next Tuesday, I'm on my own. You'll always get the best service and so on. All we did was praise her, tell her we thought she was going to do wonderfully. I told her, I said, you're a very attractive lady, which she was, and you're going to do just great at this and so on. So in her case, it's probably going to come back from her the next time we go in there, but it also goes out, at the risk of sounding spooky, it goes out in the universe and it comes back. Mm-hmm. So there's advantages in being a positive, upbeat person. People treat you better.
Well, thank you, Ben. Excellent. Here's another question. Thanisa asked, if you can give us one single message about your life, Ben, one single message, what would that be?
There are many because of who I've been around, but let me give you one that always pops to my mind when that subject comes up. Ed Danforth, who was head of Ralston Purina, wrote, I recently heard somebody else originally said it, doesn't make any difference. I heard it from Ed Danforth, and he said, successful people do what unsuccessful people aren't willing to do, because successful people are after pleasing results, while unsuccessful people are after pleasing methods. In other words, most people do just enough to get by and what doesn't hurt and doesn't stress them and so on. And successful people do whatever's necessary with integrity, whatever's necessary. And that sometimes when I start to think, is it worth it, or something didn't go exactly that I'd planned, successful people do. And then I recite that in my head and I'm back on track again. Mm-hmm. At a seminar in Las Vegas week or two ago, somebody said, what were the three things you learned from Dr. Napoleon Hill? And the three most important things in one word each. And I thought, oh, thanks a lot. There's putting me on the spot. But what I did was I just dipped into my subconscious memory and I said, focus, action, integrity. When I think of Dr. Hill, those three pop to my mind. If she'd asked for four, I probably could have come up with something else. But I remember thinking, thank you, Jesus. I really appreciate the help there. But focus, because I had a real focus problem. Taking action, you can be the brightest person in the world. If you don't take action, you might as well be the dumbest person in the world. Nothing's going to happen. And then integrity, do it all with integrity.
I love that. I mean, if we could all just improve on those three areas, our lives will be so much better. That would be a great place to end this conversation, but I just can't. I just want to ask one more and another one after, another one after.
I'm flattered.
This is a great question. Ben, you are so engaging. Do you have other workshops and seminars that one can attend?
Well, here's what you do. You go to my website, which is bfg3, the number 3.com. B as in Ben, F as in Frank, G as in gay, the numeral 3.com, and sign up. We don't try and sell you anything there. There's some products there, but they're higher priced than at the site you already gave them. So do the eBay thing, but go there. And then whenever I have an open seminar, means anybody can come to it. Buy a ticket or whatever, come to it. The people who are registered there, we tell them about things in their area. Gigi's my third wife, having had no desire to meet my fourth wife. I'm sure she's out there somewhere, but I really have decided I don't want to know who she is. I've cut back from 300. And Gigi told me. It was a condition of marrying Gigi. I went from 300 seminars a year to 24, no more than 3 in any one month. Most of those are closed to the public because a company or an organization brings me in to talk to their people. But whenever we have an open one where you can buy a ticket and come, we put it up on that website. So just go to bfg3.com, put in your name, and I think it asks for your physical address. Don't pay any attention to that. Your name and email is all we need.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. And I would like to close on this last question, and then, Ben, invite you for part 2, because we have what? I have 25 more questions. So
next time, we'll just do questions.
Yeah. Maybe
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That's a great idea. But this one I think is great to end with. And so therefore I'd like to thank Stuart, who is asking, Ben, if you were starting again today, what niche, sector, or industry would you choose and why?
Sales, number 1. Then I would find out what is hot. I'm a lazy guy. You know, if everybody's buying solar, for instance, which is certainly hot right now, and they're not buying Yugos, the old car from Yugoslavia, then I would gravitate towards solar. So I would find out what's going on in the industry that I could wholeheartedly endorse and get behind. Let me tell you how you get rid of 85% of the problems in selling. That's a true statistic because I made it up and I know it's true. 85% of the problems in selling go away when you sell a quality product or service that is competitively priced. Doesn't have to be the cheapest, but competitively priced. And you spend your days talking to people who are qualified to buy it. Qualified financially, spiritually, geographically, whatever it is. Each product has something that qualifies you or rules you out. Spend your days doing that. When I work in front of organizations who've hired to bring me in, I warn them, I'm on the salesperson's side. That doesn't make me anti any company, but I'm on the salesperson's side. And if I give them, for instance, that little formula, your company doesn't fit, and they ask me about it, I will encourage them to leave your company. They need to sell a quality product or service that's competitively priced, spend their time talking to qualified people. Meanwhile, the other 15%, 5% is product knowledge, roughly. There's 7,000 parts, I'm told, on the average automobile. The buyer cares about 3 or 4 of them. Where's the steering wheel? Where's the ignition? Where's the brakes? Where's the accelerator? That's the extent of what I know about any car, and that's all I need to know. Oh, and I always say to the salesman, and what's your phone number when that
and what color is it?
Well,
Come on.
yeah, that's Gigi.
Right.
We bought a big Denali. I wanted it to be 6,000 pounds for tax reasons. There were 2 Toyotas something and a Denali, GMC Denali. One was gold, one was white, and the dealership handled both of them. So we brought them out on the lawn, and he said, what do you prefer? I said, do they both weigh 6,000 pounds? He said, yeah. And I said, well, I'm sure they're both nice cars. Gigi, what color do you like? She said, white. Bang. That was it. That's all right. And well, I wouldn't have needed to know the color.
I love your answer because, sales is the underbelly of all businesses. I mean, that is the transaction between 2 human beings, the decision making. In a way, I look upon sales as mentorship.
Absolutely. The great sales mentor, Elmer Wheeler, he's the one who said, sell the sizzle, not the steak. He also said, nothing happens till somebody sells something.
Mm-hmm. On that score, let you go for now, but not for long. We have a date, right?
All right.
And great. So we'll come back for part 2 and lots of Q&A. And I once again want to thank everybody who stayed on. Oh my gosh, 3/4 of all of our attendees stayed on for the extra time. I want to thank you so much, everyone, for.
Do I get overtime or anything?
Yes. Yes, you certainly do. And once again, we want to thank you. I invite you to get in touch with Ben, and in whatever way that we can support you, let us know. And I
Thank
also
you.
invite you to everyone to the YouTube channel that this particular replay can be seen and enjoyed over and over. And I just put that into the chat so that you'll have that. And finally, we want to, both of us, both Ben and myself, wish to thank you very much for your time today. Thank you, Ben. Thank you for being with us. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you very much.
Bye for now.